In 2023, Hollywood shut down, not because of a box office slump, not because of a streaming war, because the people who write the stories, perform the characters, and give movies their soul decided they'd had enough. The writers went on strike for 148 days. The actors joined them. And at the center of both strikes, underneath all the contract disputes and residual arguments, was one word that terrified an entire industry: AI. Now the strikes are over. The picket lines are gone. But the fight isn't finished. It's moved somewhere else. Into courtrooms. Into contract negotiations. Into the quiet decisions being made right now inside studios, streaming platforms, and AI companies about what the future of entertainment actually looks like. And here's why you should care, even if you've never written a screenplay in your life. The battle over AI and Hollywood is a preview of a fight that's coming to almost every creative profession. What gets decided here will influence how music is made, how advertising works, how video games are built, and ultimately, how much human creativity is worth in a world where machines can generate content at almost zero marginal cost. This is a story about movies, but it's really a story about the future of work. To understand what's at stake, you need to understand what AI can actually do inside a film production today, and what people feared it would be used to do. Start with the writer's side. For decades, screenwriters have worked in a system called the writer's room. A group of writers, usually employed by a studio or streaming platform, collaborates on stories, episodes, and scripts. The size of the room, the number of writers, and the minimum pay were all negotiated through union contracts with the WGA, the Writers Guild of America. What studios began proposing, before the strike forced a reckoning, was the use of AI tools to generate first drafts of scripts, and then hire a smaller number of human writers to polish what the AI produced. On paper, that sounds efficient. In practice, it meant fewer jobs, lower pay, and the erosion of the entry-level positions where new writers traditionally learned their craft. The fear wasn't just about current jobs, it was about the pipeline. If AI handles the early drafts, you don't need as many junior writers, and if you don't have junior writers gaining experience, you eventually don't have senior writers either. The whole ecosystem collapses slowly from the bottom up. The WGA ultimately won meaningful protections in their new contract. Studios agreed they could not use AI to write or rewrite literary material, and AI-generated content could not be considered source material that would reduce a writer's credit or compensation. Writers were also guaranteed the right to know if they were being asked to work with AI-generated material. Those protections matter, but they cover what studios can ask union members to do. They don't cover what AI companies are building independently, and that's where the lawsuits come in. Let's talk about what AI companies have actually been doing with Hollywood content. Training a large language model, the kind of AI that can generate coherent text, dialogue, and narrative, requires feeding it enormous amounts of existing content. Scripts, screenplays, novels, television transcripts, film dialogue. The argument that AI companies have used is that this falls under fair use, the same legal principle we covered when discussing the New York Times lawsuit. But screenwriters and the WGA have pointed to something specific. There are data sets that have circulated in the AI research community that explicitly included copyrighted screenplays scraped from the internet without permission. Scripts for major films, television pilots, produced episodes. This isn't a hypothetical. It's documented. And it forms the basis of legal arguments that AI companies used Hollywood's creative output, without asking, without paying, to build tools that now compete directly with the people who wrote those scripts. Now add the actors. SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild, went on strike alongside the writers, and their concerns had a different but equally significant dimension. AI can now synthesize human voices with remarkable accuracy. It can generate realistic digital likenesses of actors. It can, in theory, take footage of a performer captured during one project and use that to create new performances the actor never gave, in perpetuity, without additional compensation, potentially without even notifying them. The studios, in pre-strike negotiations, had proposed terms that actors and their union found alarming. The specific concern was around what's called a digital replica, a digital copy of an actor's appearance and voice. Some proposals would have allowed studios to capture an actor's likeness once, pay them for a single day of work, and then use that digital replica however they wanted, forever, in any context. If you're a background actor, someone who might earn a few $100s appearing in a crowd scene, that proposal meant your face could theoretically appear in productions indefinitely, with no further payment. SAG-AFTRA won protections too. Digital replicas now require informed consent and compensation. But the definition of what constitutes a replica, what counts as consent, and what fair compensation looks like in practice, those battles continue in negotiations and in court. Here's where it gets genuinely complicated, and where the story shifts from labor rights to something deeper. Several major AI companies, including companies building video generation tools, have been trained on content that includes film footage, television broadcasts, and streaming content. The question of whether that training constitutes copyright infringement has not been resolved. What has become clear is that the capabilities these tools have developed are real and advancing quickly. Text-to-video AI systems can already generate short video clips from written descriptions. The quality isn't yet at the level of professional film production. But the trajectory is what concerns people inside Hollywood. The question isn't whether these tools can replace a blockbuster production today. The question is what they can do in 3 years, in 5 years, and whether the legal and economic framework governing their use will be ready when they get there. Let's bring in the financial dimension, because this is ultimately also a story about where money flows in the entertainment industry. The global film and television industry generates hundreds of billions of dollars annually. A significant portion of that flows through residuals, ongoing payments to writers, actors, directors, and crew when their work is reused, rebroadcast, or licensed. Residuals were the economic backbone that allowed mid-career creative professionals to sustain themselves between projects. The streaming era already disrupted the residuals system significantly. When Netflix or a similar platform releases a show, the traditional residual structures that applied to broadcast television didn't map cleanly onto a streaming model. Writers and actors saw their residual income drop sharply as more content moved to streaming. That was actually a core grievance in both strikes, not just AI. AI compounds that problem. If a show can be extended, dubbed into additional languages, or repurposed using AI-synthesized versions of actors' voices and likenesses, the argument that additional compensation is owed becomes harder to enforce without clear contract language. The studios have a financial incentive to reduce labor costs. AI tools, if deployed aggressively, could reduce those costs substantially. The union contracts that resulted from the strikes represent a first line of defense, but contracts expire, get renegotiated, and apply only to union members. Independent and international productions operate outside those union agreements. And AI companies building these tools aren't bound by SAG-AFTRA or WGA contracts at all. So you have a situation where the largest Hollywood studios agreed to some guardrails, but the AI companies building the underlying tools, and the independent productions using those tools globally, face different and often weaker constraints. This is the gap that lawyers are now trying to close through litigation. Several lawsuits have been filed or are in development, targeting AI companies that trained on film and television content. The legal theories parallel what we've seen in the music and publishing cases, that using copyrighted audio-visual material to train AI models without a license constitutes infringement, regardless of what you ultimately produce with that model. The outcomes are genuinely uncertain. Courts are still developing doctrine around AI training and fair use. The cases will take years to fully resolve. Let's talk about something that the mainstream coverage often misses: the difference between AI as a tool and AI as a replacement. Not everyone inside Hollywood opposes AI, not even close. Many directors and producers are actively exploring AI tools for tasks that have traditionally been expensive and time-consuming. Pre-visualization, the process of creating rough visual mock-ups of scenes before filming begins, used to require a small army of artists working for weeks. AI tools can now produce usable previs work much faster and at much lower cost. Visual effects houses are using AI to speed up rotoscoping, the painstaking process of isolating subjects from backgrounds frame by frame. AI-assisted color grading, noise reduction, and resolution enhancement are already standard in post-production pipelines. Sound departments are using AI to clean dialogue tracks, reduce background noise, and separate audio elements in ways that previously required expensive studio time. None of these applications are particularly controversial. They make production more efficient without replacing the creative decisions that human professionals make. The controversy lives in a different zone: the use of AI to replace creative labor in writing, performance, and character generation. And even there, the picture is more nuanced than a simple replacement story. Some composers are experimenting with AI as a collaborator, generating musical sketches that they then develop and refine. Some writers are using AI tools to brainstorm, check logic, or explore alternative story directions, while maintaining full creative control over what actually gets written. The question isn't whether AI belongs in creative production. It's who controls it, who benefits from it, and what happens to the people whose existing work and existing likenesses made these tools possible. Here's something worth sitting with. When an AI system learns to write convincing dialogue, it does so in part because it processed thousands of scripts written by human beings who spent years developing that skill. When an AI system learns to synthesize a voice convincingly, it does so because it processed recordings of real human performances. The question of whether that process constitutes theft, inspiration, or something entirely new, legally, ethically, economically, is genuinely contested. Thoughtful people disagree. The answer isn't obvious. What is clear is that the people who created the source material have an interest in how it's used, and the legal system is only beginning to work out what rights they have. Let's get practical. What does this mean for different people watching this video? If you work in a creative field, writing, acting, voice work, music, design, visual effects, animation, the most important thing you can understand is that the protections being negotiated and litigated now will shape your economic reality for the next decade. Staying informed about what your union is doing, what contracts cover, and what rights you have over your likeness and your creative output isn't optional. It's professional self-defense. If you're a student or early career creative, this landscape is both more threatening and more open than it was for previous generations. The threat is real. Some entry-level work will be automated, but people who learn to work effectively with AI tools, who understand both the creative craft and the technology, will likely have advantages over those who ignore either side of that equation. If you're an investor or someone watching the entertainment sector, the companies building AI video and voice synthesis tools are operating in a legal environment that's genuinely uncertain. The IP exposure of these companies, the potential liability for how their training data was assembled, is a risk factor that belongs in any serious analysis. At the same time, studios that figure out how to deploy AI responsibly to reduce production costs could see significant margin improvements. If you're just a viewer, someone who watches movies and television, the outcomes of these battles will affect what kinds of stories get made, who gets to make them, and what the creative culture looks like in 15 years. Let's be honest about what we don't know, because this is a story where uncertainty is important. We don't know how courts will ultimately rule on AI training and copyright. The cases are early. We don't know how fast AI video generation will improve. The pace has been rapid, but predicting specific timelines is genuinely hard. We don't know whether the union contract protections will hold up in the next round of negotiations. Contracts that seem strong in one cycle can erode in the next when economic pressure shifts. We don't know what the consumer appetite for AI-generated content actually is at scale. There are signs that audiences notice and sometimes dislike content that feels artificial, but we don't have reliable long-term data. And we don't know whether a new licensing and royalty framework for AI training data will emerge from legislation, from court rulings, or from voluntary industry agreements, or some combination of all three. What we do know is that these questions are being actively contested by well-funded parties on multiple sides. The outcomes won't be random. They'll reflect the relative power of the institutions pushing for different answers. There's a historical parallel worth holding on to. When the VCR was invented, the film industry panicked. Jack Valenti, who led the Motion Picture Association of America, famously told Congress in 1982 that the VCR was to the American film producer what the Boston Strangler was to a woman alone. The industry tried to have home recording declared illegal. They lost. And the VCR turned out to be one of the most profitable technologies the film industry ever encountered. Home video revenue eventually exceeded theatrical box office for decades. The pattern of creative industries fearing new technology, fighting it legally and politically, and then eventually adapting, and often prospering from it, is not new. That history doesn't mean AI will follow the same arc. The scale and pace are different. The labor implications are potentially more severe. But it does suggest that the instinct to assume a technology means only destruction, without accounting for new forms of value it might create, has a poor track record. What the Hollywood conflict has done, more clearly than almost any other sector, is force a concrete, high-stakes negotiation about the specific terms under which AI enters a creative industry. Those terms matter. The details of what was won and lost in the WGA and SAG-AFTRA contracts will influence negotiations in music, journalism, video games, and visual arts. Hollywood was a proving ground. The contract language that emerged is being studied by unions and industry groups in every creative field. The lawsuits that follow will either reinforce those protections or carve out exceptions that gradually hollow them out. And the AI companies, which didn't sit at the bargaining table because they weren't party to those union negotiations, will continue to develop tools whose capabilities outpace whatever legal framework exists at any given moment. That's the dynamic you need to understand. Not a simple story of good versus evil, technology versus humanity, or innovation versus tradition. It's a genuinely complex negotiation between multiple groups with legitimate interests, being worked out in real time, with imperfect information and enormous financial stakes. The smartest thing you can do, whatever your relationship to this industry, is follow it carefully, not through the lens of who's winning the cultural argument, but through the lens of what's actually being decided, what precedents are being set, and how those precedents will eventually reach the field you work in. Because they will. If you create anything, and in an economy where almost every professional produces some kind of written, visual, or conceptual output, the questions being answered in Hollywood courtrooms and contract negotiations are practice runs for questions that will eventually arrive at your door. The story of Hollywood and AI is still being written. No one knows how it ends. But the fact that you understand what's actually at stake, not just the headlines, but the mechanisms, the legal questions, the financial implications, and the labor dynamics underneath them, puts you ahead of most people watching this story unfold. Stay curious, stay informed, and don't mistake the noise for the signal. If this video gave you something useful, the like button genuinely helps this channel reach people who care about understanding these questions seriously. Subscribe if you want to keep thinking through AI, money, and technology together. And I'd love to know what you think in the comments. Is Hollywood right to fight back hard, or is this just another technology that the industry will eventually adapt to? See you in the next one.